I found the flyer taped to the laundromat bulletin board, between a lost cat poster and an ad for guitar lessons. Sleep study participants needed, $180 per night. Healthy adults, 21 to 45. A row of little tear-off tabs ran along the bottom, each printed with a phone number. Most of the tabs were already gone. I want to be honest about why I even called. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't some interest in science. I was $41 short on rent. My warehouse hours had been cut for the third week running, and I had a landlord who'd stopped saying hello to me in the stairwell. You know that kind of broke. The kind where you do math in the cereal aisle, where you let the phone ring because you already know which number it is and what they want. I sold my guitar last month. I'd sold a good winter coat. I was down to the things that, well, you can't sell. $180 a night, I thought. For sleeping? I've been doing that for free my whole fucking life. I looked up the place before I called. The website was a single page, a stock photo of a sunrise, a paragraph of soft language about circadian wellness, and that same phone number. No reviews, no address listed, nothing about it anywhere else. I told myself that meant that they were small and new, not that they were the kind of place that makes sure there's nothing to find. So, I called. They called themselves the Halcyon Center. The address they texted led to an office park off the highway, the kind with a man-made pond and a fountain that wasn't running. Inside, everything was clean. Maybe too clean. But I told myself that's how medical places are supposed to be. The waiting room smelled like nothing at all, which is a hard smell to describe. Like air that had been scrubbed. A woman at the desk gave me a clipboard. Forms about my health, my medications, my caffeine, whether I drank. Standard stuff. I'd filled out worse at a dentist's office. The last page was a waiver, the kind you sign without reading. I read this one later, after, when it was far too late to even matter. Most of it was the usual, but near the bottom, in the same gray font as everything else, 2 lines. All recordings made during your session remain the sole property of the center. And below it, enrollment is ongoing. The center may continue to contact the participant after participation has concluded. I initialed it. You always initial it. Nobody reads the part where they sign themselves away. That's the whole reason it works. Then, a man came out to get me. He wore scrubs and a lanyard, and a smile that reached all the way up to his eyes. "You must be the new sleeper," he said. "I'm Renner. I'll be looking after you tonight." His handshake was warm and dry, and friendly. I liked him right away, and I'll admit that made the rest of it harder to see. He walked me back through a hallway lined with doors. Each had a little frosted window and a number. Some were lit from inside. Most weren't. As we passed one of the dark ones, I heard a voice behind it. Low, steady, going on and on without a pause for breath. The way a voice does when it's reading a long list. Sound machine, I told myself. A recording to help them sleep. "Home sweet home," Renner said, stopping at room 9. And behind us, the voice in the dark room went quiet all at once, like it had heard him too. The room looked like a hotel that had never been slept in. White bed, nightstand, a camera in the upper corner, behind a dark dome of plastic. A neat coil of wires on the pillow. Renner ran through the housekeeping while he peeled the backing off the electrodes, in the bored voice of a man who's said it 1,000 times. "Don't eat within 2 hours of the session. Once the wires are on, don't pull them. If you wake in the night, stay in bed and press the call button. Don't get up. Don't come to the door." Then, in the exact same tone, like it was the least interesting thing he'd said all night. "And in the mornings, people sometimes ask to hear how they did. The audio, the recordings, we can't share that. Folks hear themselves and get self-conscious, and it throws off the next session's numbers. So we just ask you not to think about it. The recordings. What recordings? Sleep talkers, he said, easy, already clipping a sensor to my finger. Most people don't know they do it. You'd be amazed what comes out. It doesn't really mean anything. The brain just empties its pockets. But people hear it and spook themselves. Easier all around if we don't open that door. It made sense. It made perfect sense. That's the thing about a good lie. It doesn't ask you to believe anything strange. It hands you something reasonable and lets you do the rest. He gave a small white capsule in a paper cup. Mild sleep aid. Helps you settle. I swallowed it without a second thought. He dimmed the lights. I'm right outside. Anything at all? Press the button. Sleep well. The door closed with a soft, heavy sound. Not a slam, more like a seal. The last thing I remember is the green light on the monitor box, blinking slow. Then, it was morning. Not drifting into morning. Not the soft climb up out of a dream. 1 second, the green light was blinking, and the next, the room was full of gray daylight, and Renner was peeling the electrodes off my face. There he is, he said. How do you feel? I felt fine. That was the strange part. I felt good, actually. I rested in a way that I hadn't been in months, but there was nothing in between, no sense of time passing, just a hard cut, like a scene change in a movie. I don't even remember falling asleep, I said. That's the goal, Renner said, coiling a wire around his hand. Means you are under clean. You did great. You did great. He said it like a coach, like I'd won something. He handed me an envelope, $180 cash, in 20s, and asked if I wanted to book again. Rent was due in 9 days. So yeah, I booked it again. And here's how it gets you. It isn't dramatic. There's no moment where you decide to keep going. The money just quietly rearranges your week. The light bill stops being a problem. You buy the good coffee for once. You catch up the rent. Then you get a little ahead. And being a little ahead feels so good after being behind that you stop asking what you're trading for it. I went from broke to comfortable in 11 nights of doing nothing but lying down and sleeping. Nobody walks away from that. They're counting on the fact that nobody walks away from that. The second night was the same. The clean room, the cold paste, the green light, the hard cut to morning. You did great. It was the third morning that the first thing didn't fit. My socks. I'd worn them to bed. The room ran cold. But when I woke, they were folded, one tucked into the other, set neatly on the nightstand, not kicked off in the sheets. Folded. People do things in their sleep, I told myself. They drive cars. They cook whole meals. Folding socks is nothing. So I noticed, and I didn't ask, and I went back. And once I started noticing, I couldn't stop. The taste every morning, flat and mineral, like I'd been chewing a battery, or like I'd been talking for hours until my throat went dry and strange. My voice cracked and ruined at breakfast, the way it gets after a concert, after a night of shouting. But I hadn't shouted. I had been asleep, and I slept great. One morning, my watch sat on the nightstand, set 40 minutes fast. I never take it off to sleep. Another morning, there was dirt under my fingernails, fine and dark, like soil, though I'd done nothing but lie in a clean white bed. I scrubbed it out at the sink and watched it swirl down the drain, and decided not to think about where a sealed room with no windows would get dirt. Another morning, the corner chair had been moved to the foot of the bed and turned to face me, like something had sat in it, watching me lie there, sleeping. A cleaner, I thought. At 3 a.m, a cleaner. That's the thing about rationalizing. Each excuse only has to get you to the next morning. You're not building a case for a jury. You're buying one more night of not thinking about it. And one more night paid $180. Renner started calling me a natural. "You go under faster than anyone we've had," he said, almost proud. "Some people fight it for hours. You just open right up." Open right up. I thought he meant fall asleep. I held on to that for a long time. And there were the marks. Faint pink lines on the inside of my forearms, gone by lunch. The kind you'd get from gripping something too hard, from holding on. I started paying attention to the waiting room, too. There were always people in it. New faces every week. A kid in a delivery uniform. A tired mother. A man still in his work boots. People who did math in cereal aisles. The center never seemed to advertise anywhere but those tear-off tabs. And yet, the chairs were never empty. Whatever this was, it ran on a steady supply of the broke. And there's no steadier supply in the world. And a few regulars. People you'd see 2-3 weeks running, who'd stop showing up. And you never knew if they quit or just finished. One of the regulars was the woman in the church coat. On my 8th night, the woman in the waiting room spoke to me. She was already there when I arrived, maybe 60, a nice church coat, hands folded in her lap. Renner hadn't come out yet. "You're new," she said, quiet, barely moving her lips. "You still feel rested in the mornings?" It wasn't a question. I said yes anyway. "How many have you done?" I asked her. "I stopped counting," she said. And then she smiled, and it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. She leaned in a little closer. The folded hands didn't move. "When it starts counting," she said, "and it will, don't listen for your own." The inner door opened. Renner came out with his lanyard and his warm-eyed smile, and the woman straightened back up and went silent, and she didn't look at me again. "Ready, friend?" he said. I followed him back, but the words went with me, down the clean hallway and into room 9, and they laid down beside me in the dark. Don't listen for my own what? I decided I wasn't going to take the pill. That night, I held it under my tongue. I tucked it into my cheek the way I'd seen people do in movies. When Renner left, I spat it onto my hand and slid it under the mattress. Then, I lie still, and I kept my eyes barely open. And for the first time in 2 weeks, I didn't let the green light pull me under. It was harder than you'd think. The room wanted me to sleep. The bed was warm. My eyes burned. I counted my own breaths. I dug my nails into my palm. Every time the warmth started climbing up over me, I bit the inside of my cheek until it cleared. I don't think I'd ever fought my own body before. Not really. You don't notice how much of you wants to lie down and stop until you tell it no, and then feel how hard it pushes back. The dark in that room had a weight to it, a patience, like it had all night, and I didn't. The clock said 11:40, then it said 1:15, and I couldn't account for the time in between, and that scared me badly. And the fear was good. The fear kept me up. The green light blinked, and at some point, the speaker on the wall gave a soft click, and a voice that wasn't Renner's said one word. Begin. I felt my own body move. I need you to understand that I didn't move it. I was on my side, facing the wall, and my body rolled onto its back without me. My arms drew up. My hands rose into the air above my chest and curled slowly into the shape of holding something. I put everything I had into one finger. Just one. Just to twitch it on my own. Nothing. It wasn't like being paralyzed. It was like the hand had simply stopped being mine, like I'd been moved to the back of a room in my own head, and the controls were in someone else's lap. And then I started to talk. It was my voice. That was the worst part. Not some growl, not some other thing. My voice, out of my own throat, but flat, tireless, with no breath in between the words. And what it said was names. Eleanor Reyes, Thomas Pell, Anaya Okafor, David Stein, Margaret Vance. On and on. Names I had never heard in an order that I didn't even understand. My mouth churning them out one after another, like a machine reading a roll. A man's name, a woman's, a child's. No pause, no end. I didn't know a single one of them, but my mouth did. My mouth knew all of them. The spelling out of them, the little catch on the hard consonants, the way you'd say a name you'd said 1,000 times before. And it kept the order. That's what I couldn't get past, lying there. It never stumbled, never doubled back. Whatever was reading the list through me had read it many times, and it was reading towards something. I could feel the names accelerating, the way you feel a train you can't see by the shaking of the rail. There was no red light, no signal that I was being recorded. There didn't need to be. I could hear the soft mechanical hum under the bed, steady as a refrigerator, taking it all down. That was what the room was for. I'd been lying in it for 2 weeks, with my eyes shut, reading them their list. And then, in the middle of the names, in my own dry, flat voice, I heard it say, Margaret Doyle. Church coat, folded hands, the woman from the waiting room. Don't listen for your own. I understood her then, all at once, and I had never been so afraid of anything in my life, because I was listening now. I couldn't stop listening, and the names kept coming closer and closer to the front of a line that I could feel myself standing in. It said my name, flat, tireless, in my own voice. First, last, the way you'd read it on a form. And the moment it did, something behind the names seemed to turn, the way a face turns when it finally finds you in a crowd. The speaker on the wall clicked, and Renner's voice, very calm, very kind, said, Thank you. We'll adjust the dose. My body went limp. Mine again, soaked through with sweat. I curled my fingers into the sheet and held on, and I didn't make a sound. We'll adjust the dose. Not something's wrong, not we should stop. A note, a tweak for the protocol, a sleeper who'd kept his pill and surfaced a little early. Nothing to worry about. They'd give me more next time. That was when I understood what I was to them. I wasn't a person who had discovered something. I was a piece of equipment that had reported a fault. And whatever that list was, wherever those names went, whatever waited at the end of being read onto it, I was on it now. I'd heard my own mouth put me there. The lights came up. Renner peeled the electrodes off my face and smiled the way he'd always smiled. You did great, he said. He handed me the envelope. Same time tomorrow? Here's the part I can't forgive myself for. For one long second, with that envelope in my hand and the rent due, I almost said yes. Because that's what they're counting on. That's the real study. Not how we sleep. How much we'll let them take, as long as they keep paying for it. I said no. I walked out past the dead fountain, and I drove home, and I have not gone back. But it hasn't mattered. The first night home, I couldn't sleep, and not just because I was afraid to. So, I did the thing I should have done 2 weeks earlier. I wrote down the names I could remember, and I looked them up. Eleanor Reyes, an obituary, 4 months old, 2 towns over, died peacefully in her sleep, it said. Eleanor Reyes, an obituary, 4 months old, 2 towns over, died peacefully in her sleep, it said. She was 34. Thomas Pell, a short article, reported missing by his sister in the spring, never found. The last person to see him said he'd seemed tired lately, run down, like he wasn't sleeping right. I almost didn't search the last one. I already knew, but I did it anyway, because some part of me still wanted to be wrong. Margaret Doyle, church coat, folded hands, found at home last week, in bed, no signs of anything. Peaceful, the notice said, as if she'd simply gone to sleep and decided not to come back. She told me, when it starts counting, don't listen for your own. She'd been trying to do me a kindness, In the only minute she had, she told me, when it starts counting, don't listen for your own. She'd been trying to do me a kindness, in the only minute she had. And I hadn't understood it until I heard her name come out of my mouth in a room she'd been read out of first. That's what the list is. I don't know who keeps it or what it pays them. I only know the names on it stop being people, quietly, in their sleep, in the order they were read, and that I heard my own name near the front of the part that hasn't happened yet. It doesn't need the room anymore. They opened a door in me and held it open for 2 weeks, and a door propped open that long doesn't swing shut just because you stop showing up. The first night home, in my bed, I felt the warmth come up around me. I felt my arms start to rise. I have not slept in 4 days. I'm at my kitchen table right now with every light in the apartment on and a thermos of coffee going cold beside me. My hands won't stop shaking. The marks are darker today. There are new ones on my throat. Twice, I've come back to myself standing in the kitchen with no memory of getting up, once with the phone in my hand and the halcyon number half dialed. Some part of me is still trying to go back. Some part of me wants to be told that I did great. I've tried everything you would try. Coffee until my heart stutters, cold showers, the TV turned up loud enough that the neighbors banged on the wall. I called the warehouse and told them I was sick, which was the first true thing I've said to anyone in a week. None of it buys more than an hour. It's close now. I can feel it the way you feel a name on the tip of your tongue. My eyes keep slipping. The lights don't help anymore. And just now, very far off, very quiet, and a voice I'm starting to recognize as my own. I can hear it begin to count again. Eleanor Reyes, Thomas Pell, the list picking up where it had left off, working its way to the front. And the names are getting closer and closer. And the next one I can almost make out. The next one sounds like